Hello, delivery. All right, here we are, one box, DIY fan kit, color picture instructions, and I'm going to show you how to fit it. Real easy, this video, so stay tuned. Let's dive straight into it. Okay, full disclaimer, this video is all about the installation of the fan kit on your 200 series Land Cruiser. If you want to know more about intercooler fans on your 200 series Land Cruiser, we've already got a video for that, but today's about the install. This kit fits both the 200 and the 70, but today it's all about the 200. Let's jump straight into it and get it installed. Color picture instructions, make sure you've got all the contents to do the job. Read the instructions before you start the job, and you don't have to stop halfway through, so you can finish the install and job done in an efficient manner. Sorry, 4 cylinders, it's V8 only. Okay, so step one, we're going to remove the factory intercooler cover, which is this ductwork here. How we're going to do it, 2 10mm nuts on top here, got a quarter drive deep socket and quarter drive ratchet. Simply loosen off the 2 10mm nuts. Once you've undone them, you just lift the front of the intercooler dress cover up, like so, and then you pull it towards the front of the engine. And the reason is just under here, these locating tabs sit onto these rubbers. So literally, just like that, in reverse order, we're going to remove it like that. Intercooler cover removed, we don't need it, so let's just throw it over our shoulder. Okay, so you might be asking yourself, why has he got the intercooler off the car and in his hand? He hasn't covered that step. Well, we've got a factory intercooler here. My vehicle has got a PWR intercooler on it. The principles of installing it are much the same. So I'm going to run through both options, mounting it to the PWR on the vehicle and also on the bench, and you'll get a better visual of how the kit goes together. So let's get on to the next step. Okay, so in this step, we're going to locate the controller bracket, which is this guy right here. And in the kit, we have 4 shims. We're just going to put them aside. We don't need them just yet. We've got the fitting kit. We require 2 M4 nylocks. These guys right here mount the unit of this bracket to our factory shroud, which I'll get to. Now, when it's in the vehicle, I'll show the orientation and how it's going to sit. Okay, so this is the dress cover for the fan kit. PDP, that's at the front. Now, on the driver's side of the vehicle, you're going to see some mounting tabs here. Now in the kit, there is a clear description as well. It mentions 200 series and 70 series. We have different mounting locations for different model vehicles. So as you can see, this guy is going to mount here or here. So now, you knowing the orientation of this bracket, what we're going to do is mount the controller so that the digital display is easy to read. And the probe is going to get mounted behind. Like I mentioned in the other video, we don't push the probe through the core of the intercooler. We don't want to damage anything. We mount it behind and we use the ambient temperature, which is very close to it. And obviously as the temperature drops down with the airflow under it as well, this changes and you've got your set points for your driving conditions where you're operating the vehicle. So it has the ability to be adjusted. So now we're going to mount the control module to the bracket to hold the controller. Now, a note I want to make special mention of the 2 holes, the mounting holes to the dress trim on top of the fan kit go to the top. The digital controller and the control buttons sit at the bottom, and the harness goes along here. Then underneath, the probe is going to get mounted here. Okay, so just to recap, what we've done in this step, we've mounted the controller to the mounting bracket, and you'll see here it's got the bend angle, 2 holes, like I mentioned earlier, M4 bolts, nylock. Now the digital controller and the button is at the bottom, the furthest away from the bend, and also you'll notice the temperature probe. I haven't done a final tighten up on it. I've tightened this one here. Now this one, you'll notice there is a little bit of heat shrink on the probe, and that's to grip the probe. So now we've got everything, we're happy. We can just come and tighten that up and we are happy with it, and it will be ready to install on the vehicle. Now, it is a plastic housing. I don't recommend using impact tools or zap guns. hand tools is more than enough torque. You just need to hold it on there. It's nylock, it's not going anywhere. It's ready to fit. Internal note, instructions, we could do a little update, is the mounting location, the digital display on page 7, picture 11 clearly shows the digital display at the bottom, whereas on page 2 here, it wasn't super clear to me. So if we can add another picture, awesome upgrade. Okay, so earlier we mentioned these shims and we put them aside, and now we need the intercooler. Boom. Fans. Here they are, magic. So the fan kit and how it goes on top of the intercooler, we're just gonna rest it on there. Now, note, I'm standing at the back of the intercooler, like the same, that's the front. The wiring harness goes to the back. Now, coming back to the shims, I mentioned right at the start, these guys slide just under the edges. So just like the instructions here, the green image is the intercooler. We're putting one shim in here, one on each side, then the intercooler fan mounting plate, and then another one is going to go on top, either side, and they are our shims. And the reason we're using them is we're making sure that the intercooler core to the fan plate is completely flat. And when you lay the fans on the intercooler, you're going to see a gap. Now, if you bolt them up, what happens is they bow, the fans move, bounce, cause a vibration, and you don't get a perfect seal for the air to push through the core, which is the most important thing. All the air, we've got that foam seal there, so it's pushing as much airflow as we can possibly get through the fins of the intercooler to make it as efficient as possible. And you'll see there's a slotted hole in here, so the whole fan assembly can move side to side, because we've noted some little variations from intercooler from different year models. So now that is all sitting there, and I just want to show you the orientation of it. But before we bolt it up, this piece of foam here, it is going to get stuck just down here on the fan shroud. As per the instructions, shows the location. So we just got to snip this guy into 2 pieces, front and back. And what that stops is the top cover from any little vibrations when you're going off-road with your vehicle. Okay, so we've just chopped the foam in half, and we're just going to adhere it along here. I have wiped these down with a little bit of alcohol or brake cleaner, just obviously if you've got greasy hands from removing anything on the vehicle, just like that. Now that's on there, and then the top shroud. And the reason we put that on there is so you know front to back, because the mounting orientation is important, needs to go on the driver's side of the vehicle, for the Australian spec vehicles that is. So top shroud, PDP, goes to the front of the intercooler. Just going to lift up the harnesses and lower the shroud down onto the shims that we located earlier. Okay, we've got our little washer, Allen key cap, and a tapered Allen key head. We're just going to pop that on there, washer under there, and then we're going to line up the hole with the shim. And a little trick here, you can use this guy, your Allen key. Now all of these threads, what I recommend is you just start them by hand, and like I've always mentioned in a lot of videos, just start them enough, just have them sitting there and you line them up. Remember, you are putting a metal bolt into an aluminium thread, so don't just send it home in figure of speech. Now I've got this side started, I'll come back to the other side. Now we're happy, we can just bring it down just to touch. As you can see, I'm not using any effort. I'm using the Allen key and just twisting it with my fingertips. And everything is nicely coming together. It's all nice, mounted. Okay, some quick checks on the loom and the controller before you mount it to the vehicle. The relays are already mounted, as you can see, that's these guys here. Now, fuses in the harness, we've already put dielectric grease and they're already fitted, but hey, just check they're in there and make sure you're happy with them. And last of all, there is one main fuse, and that goes to the main battery. Once again, open that up. It's got a fuse in there as well. Once you've done that, you're happy with it, all your Deutsch plugs, we know it's pretty straightforward, but I'll show you. 2-pin Deutsch plug, IP rated, easiest connection. Okay, so at this point, we're going to mount the fan controller to the shroud, and how we do that is the 2 M6 and the M6 a little nylock nut, and there's 2 locations, but today it's all about the 200 series, and in the instructions it tells you if you've got a 200 or VDJ 200 or a VDJ 70, but like I mentioned, 200 series today, so it's going to sit right here. And the reason is there's an intercooler or the intake to the intercooler because it's got 2 turbos, so it has to sit further back. So a little tip here as well is start on this one here, because that one there is a little bit harder to get to. Just going to put the M6 bolt through the hole, put my finger from behind, hold the nylock nut. Now you can do this off the vehicle as well. It's just I'm on the bench and this is how I'm doing it to show you for video purposes, but it is much easier to do when this shroud isn't fitted to the intercooler. This step can be done on the vehicle, but it is much easier to do on the shroud before we do these Allen keys up and mount it. If it's off the car, you're going to need a open-ended spanner to get in there. This step I highly recommend doing before you mount the shroud. So I've just tightened up the fan controller to the top shroud. Now, like I mentioned, mount it to the shroud before you put the shroud on the intercooler and do it up, because as you can see, it's pretty hard to get to that nylock nut under there when it's on the vehicle. Now let me lay it down. Imagine trying to get that 10 mil under there. It's much easier before you put the shroud on to mount the controller. So now that's all mounted off in the car, pretty much just going to start your loom off and go along the firewall, and you're just going to zip tie the loom so it's in a nice, safe, secure place. And when you come to the middle, obviously you've got 2 Deutsch plugs here for your fan. They just clip in like so. Yes, we've given you length to work with because obviously different accessories, different things in the engine bay, you may need to set it off. That last step and where you put it is there's a little bit of length to work with, and as well, we've also got the trigger wire here as well. This is left longer because on a 200 series, we need to go that way to the passenger side of the vehicle, and I'll show you where that goes under the bonnet of my 200. And just to recap on the rest of the loom, 2 cables to terminate. Red means positive on the main battery, and the black is an earth, and this one's got the fuse. Positive, fuse, main battery, earth point, and our trigger wire, and we're job done electrically. Okay, so this green cable here that we've capped off with heat shrink, so it's all watertight and IP rated. This is a manual override, so if you wanted to fit a switch in the cab or somewhere else and manually turn the fans on without the controller, you can do. We don't use that. The controller does a great job of that, so I would recommend just leaving it just as it is unless you need a reason to use it. Okay, so before we mount the fan shroud and the fan kit to the vehicle, there's one connector on a 200 series, is right near the dipstick. We need to dislodge the connector that holds the loom, and we're just going to re-secure that with a zip tie, and that loom there is to the airflow meter. I've got an aftermarket airbox in here, the Donaldson one, so it is a different length to what it originally was. If you've got other harnesses, it may have already been slightly tweaked anyway. Now that'll allow the controller to sit in the right location and lower it down. Once you've done that, then we can start zip tying the loom off, and we're just going to run along the firewall, and like I mentioned, plug in those Deutsch plugs. They're straightforward, just a straight 2-pin connection, run around to the main battery, securing off the loom, and then we're going to terminate the earth and the positive, and just like that, that's the installation done. There's one cable left to do, and that's the ignition pickup. So you've made it over to the main battery, all the looms pre-installed, positive, straight onto the main battery here. The earth point, you can put it straight onto the battery, or there's an earth point right down here. Connect those 2, tie off the looms, put the fuse in a serviceable location, so should you need to get to it for any reason, you can, and then finish zip tying the loom off. Lastly is our ignition pickup. This single core wire, and the reason it is separate to the loom is because on a 70 series it goes to the driver's side, and on a 200 series it's coming over here to the passenger side, and we're going to pop this fuse cover and we're going to connect a piggyback fuse holder in the 200 series. So let's show you how to do that. Wiring instructions for your 200 series. Here it is. Here's the wiring kit. You just need this fuse tap. We've already pre-crimped it on here, and you will need a heat shrink or heat gun to shrink this down. It is an IP rated connector, so it's a butt joiner, barrel joiner. Set of crimpers, crimp it off, heat gun, that connection's all sealed. Now this is a fuse tap. We're going to remove the factory ignition fuse, which as you'll see in the picture is here. And then we are going to then tap in and put in the fuse in the top, like so, and just here, like that. And we are going to put in the 10 amp ignition pickup, engine ignition number 2. This is the fuse cover lid upside down, and this is a picture of what it looks like. Check your vehicle, make sure you're in the right plug, and we're going to remove the factory fuse, put this in there, and it's a little piggyback pickup, and all it's doing is giving a signal to our digital controller to trigger the ignition pickup to turn the relays on. There's no electrical load, it's only triggering the digital controller. To remove the fuse cover, clip here, here, and here, and you simply just lift it up. Obviously I've got lots of aftermarket accessories in my vehicle. Okay, so we've got the cover off, and underneath the cover you'll see the fuse location. I've got it installed, but I just want to show you where it is. Now underneath the fuse cover, like in the instructions, it labels down here where the fuses are, and when you're sitting it like this, the view of this up this way is the same as the fuse holder, so locate it. Now to get this cable here, little tip with this one is I like to loosen off the 3 little 10mm bolts under the fuse box, slightly loosen it, and then come in through the back cable entry here, so it looks all nice and factory. Bring in the cable so you've got room to work with, and here is the crimp that's been used as a heat shrink. There's resin in there, we've joined it with a crimper, and it's a solid connection, and away you go. That's shrink down, fuse holder tap done. Now we can start testing off our installation. Okay, so just like that, we've turned the ignition on, the controller's come live, it comes up with the ambient temperature. It seems much hotter in here today anyway. Now that'll power up. Now the good trick is to turn it to ignition, it should power up. And another quick test to do as well to make sure you've got the right pickup is only turn it to accessories and it shouldn't turn on. If it does, you've got it in the wrong pickup. You need to be ignition, because you only want the fans to come on with ignition. You don't want fans to activate with accessories on. So next step is to set the controller up, and then we can check the calibration of the fans and that they're moving the air in the correct condition or the correct flow, and that is through the intercooler, not trying to push the air back out the front. We've seen a few kits where the fan airflow is going the wrong way, and people are none the wiser because they haven't validated the fan installation, the last step, and it's very important. Oh, can't wait for these fans to be working. It's hot in here, let alone the under bonnet temperatures. Okay, so setting the controller and how to set it up. Like I mentioned, the first temperature it's going to come on when you power up is the ambient, and it's at 25 degrees. Like I mentioned, seems a lot bloody hotter than that in the workshop today. Now, if you hold the button down, or press it once, it comes up to what you have them set at. Now, and press it again, it'll keep going 1 degree at a time. If you push and hold it, it'll scale from whatever you had it set at all the way up to 110 degrees Celsius, and then restart back at 40. Me personally, what I set these fans at is 40. The reason is I like my intercooler to be no heat soak temperature under the bonnet, so I have it on at 40, and anything under 40, the fans are off. So that means when it's cold in the morning, fans aren't running. If it's cool enough under bonnet temperatures and ambience, and the airflow through the front of the car, the fans aren't running. Now let's program it and show you how to set it up. It's pretty easy, it's really simple. Once you've set it once, it's done, it holds its memory, and away you go. So how do I monitor those temperatures? I've got a scan gauge 2 in my vehicle. Now all of our scan gauges out of the box in the 2s are set up with this function here, CAT. That is charge air temperature. The sensor in the back of the intercooler, as you'll see here, I've got 29 degrees. Now the CIA is the intake temperature at the MAF sensor at the airbox. You'll see that's at 35 degrees, and EGT is the exhaust gas temperatures, and CWT is the coolant temperatures of the engine. Now, as the ambient temperatures come up, the airflow is going to sense a higher ambient temperature. The turbos are going to work harder. The charge air is going to get hotter. Now, having the fans on there, I can get the intercooler at a more efficient state, and I can monitor my charge air temperatures. The cooler I get them, the better my EGTs are going to be, and it means the engine's going to perform better feel sharper, but go harder, drive better, and it's going to be more efficient on fuel with more power equals better drivability. That's how I'm monitoring my 200 series. And it's even easier if you've got a scan gauge 3. I'm running the 2. The 3 is an awesome bit of gear. You can even record it, set all your min maxes, and have alarms. So if you haven't got one, that's how I recommend you monitor your charge air temperatures. All right, it's hot in here. It's time to start the engine up, check it all off, get the fans running, and we can cool down. So as you can see, the temperatures come up on the controller. Last step is to check the flow of the air. We want it to come in the front of the car, through the ductwork, through the vent. Now put this on top of the fan and notice how it's sucking it down. Same thing this side. Now we know the fan, the airflow is pushing it through. Now you might have noticed as well, you'll see a little bit of movement on the fans. You'll see them bouncing up and down a little bit like that. You'll see this seal here, and we've got it perfect. You just touch here with one finger. See how they're bouncing? That seal there, as you can see, these are fitted to my vehicle, and the seal is perfectly sealing to get all the airflow through the intercooler. When it's sitting there and finished off, it's perfect. And as you can see, that just cooled down the intercooler from 40 degrees. I'm not sure what it's sitting at now, but it must be under 40 because it's already cooled it off, and they've turned off, so they're not wasting precious battery voltage and making the alternator work harder. So all your other accessories, your lithium, all your chargers, whatever you're doing with your vehicle, you're getting the charge to where it's needed, not drawing 13 amps to run 2 fans constantly only on ignition. Just like that, I'm trip ready. Stay cool with your fan kit, and I'll see you on the tracks.